Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
The race to be Knoxville's next mayor. Today we are meeting candidate Calvin Skinner and his pitch to the voters. Also, Bill Dunn has been next in line to lead the State House, but he says he's not looking to be the speaker. And former Governor Bill Haslam making it official. He will not be running for U.S. Senate. What's behind this decision and what names are now rising to the top right now on Tennessee This Week. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Kristen Farley. First up today, everyone, we are diving right back into the race to be Knoxville's next mayor. On the ballot, Mike Andrews, Fletcher Burkhart, India Kincannon, also Eddie Manis, Marshall Stair, and today's guest, everyone, Calvin Taylor Skinner. So good to see you today. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go and start with just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and who you are and why you decided to run.
Absolutely. I'm Calvin Taylor Skinner, a faith leader, community organizer, and Knoxvillian. Growing up here in Knoxville, I graduated from Fulton High School, where I graduated and went on to the University of Tennessee. And upon graduation, I went to Philadelphia, where I worked around diversity and inclusion and also community development work. And then going on to Washington, D.C., I did leadership development and faith and policy. And coming back, I was eager because I saw really how the local impacts the national, and coming back to really bring change and help people expand their vision in terms of really how Knoxville can be a national model for addressing the needs and the concerns, bringing back what I say, the moral compass, pointing the moral compass in terms of where this nation should be. It can start right here in Knoxville.
You've moved around a lot, been in a lot of big cities. Yep. What is it like coming home? And what do you see, what areas of Knoxville do you see that we need to kind of change or improve upon?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say from Knoxville, I gained Knoxville values of resiliency and resourcefulness. So going to Philadelphia and DC, bringing those values, I really found my place there because folks really embrace that, because when you're in a room of decision makers, folks who understand really what transformation looks like, they want those people who have those kind of values to push the city forward. So gaining that experience, that exposure, national exposure, being on this certain stage of influential leaders, coming back, I'm eager to empower people who have not been represented to even expand the perspective and the story of Knoxville. So where people have not been represented at the table, there's certainly need to do so.
Let's talk about some of the big issues right now in the city, Calvin. One of them has been Recode Knoxville. Yes. Do you think this has been handled correctly, and what would you like to see done here?
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, it seems as if people do not understand, if you poll the average person, what Recode is all about. Through folks within the community pressing the city to slow down the process, I feel that we have to be more intentional to make sure that people understand what the implications to Recode is. There is distrust because, as I share, that there is a sentiment for many decades ago when the last time there was a comprehensive update of a code, it did not serve particular communities well. So we have to ensure that people know how it impacts them and how people can even take advantage of the codes being updated.
So right now, am I hearing that you would say, let's not pass this, let's have more discussion?
Absolutely. I am not a proponent right now for Recode passing. As I shared, people need to really understand, and there should be more community input.
So let's talk about growth here in our community, because a lot of people will say that's what Recode is about, kind of controlling that, making sure we're doing it the right way. How do we continue to prosper and grow as a city, but not get too big? You hear that all the time. I don't want to get too big. I don't want to be in Nashville. I want to stay Knoxville.
Yeah, Knoxville is certainly unique in terms of our culture, our vicinity, being really regionally conveniently located to the other cities. But I think we can be intentional to preserve the intimacy that this city provides. And the best way to do that is to make sure the folks who are in this city, folks from the city, are engaged. They are part of the process in the decision making on how the city grows and where it goes.
All right, let's talk a little bit about public safety. Huge factor in any city you go to. How do you tackle the issue of having enough police officers out on the street, but also paying them enough and keeping up community relations at the same time? How does all of that gel together?
Yeah, the best practice that I have seen, especially in Philadelphia, is community policing, where police officers from the community serve the community, and cultivating those sort of relationships really helps build the trust and hopefully brings the necessary transparency that there's a true partnership between community members and law enforcement to ensure that the community is safe and thriving.
Would you like to see more precinct styles, maybe rather than having a giant headquarters like's been proposed from the Rogero administration, and maybe have smaller precincts in our community?
Like you said, due my experience in Philadelphia, I've seen that, but I know that Knoxville is unique. It's not as large as a Philadelphia, but certainly we could put that on the table for consideration. But I think, again, because of the uniqueness of the intimacy of Knoxville, I'm sure we could recruit and find officers who are willing to live in the city that in the communities that they patrol.
Let's talk a little bit about homelessness. It's a big problem here in the Knoxville community. A lot of people who work and live along Broadway would tell you that. Of course, the Rogero administration putting in some resources, building that safe space under the I-40 bridge. What would your plan be moving forward to tackle homelessness here in Knoxville? Yeah,
well, the wonderful thing is that there are community resources doing the work and ensuring that they are at the table, addressing affordable housing, but also wages and also affordable living. To share with folks, some of us are one paycheck away from finding ourselves in similar circumstances. And unfortunately, as we think about the cost of utilities going up and issues around having access to fresh foods at an affordable price, that has been a challenge. But I know there are groups such as Renew Tennessee who are addressing, and SEED, who are addressing matters around utilities. But another thing is we cannot criminalize homelessness. We always have to think about the least of these, and again, tap into those resources, those faith institutions, those nonprofits who are doing the work, support them, and expand their capacity.
So you believe it needs to be a partnership between these nonprofits and the community and the city to tackle this together?
Yeah. All hands on deck, because it is a challenge and it's something that we have to take even unconventional approaches to, and again, all hands on deck.
All right, let's say that you become mayor here in the city of Knoxville and someone comes to you and says, we need more revenue right now. How will you tackle this? Would you cut jobs or services, or would you raise taxes?
So what I have found, again, is how do we find unique ways of attracting revenue and such. And through my experience also with live events, actually, my partner and I, we have had partnerships with YouTube and Google, and most recently, my partner led an effort with the Shed in New York, where she partnered with Quincy Jones and Steve McQueen, the Oscar-winning movie director. But in our conversations and engagement with them, they are looking for opportunities for live events. I feel Knoxville could be a great place to host these events that will attract visitors and raise our revenue even through hotels and such.
Would you be against a tax increase?
On the table, I would not be opposed. That was certainly something that we would look into, but I wouldn't necessarily oppose that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Knoxville's future. Where do you see us going? What would you like to see? What was your grand plan moving forward for our city?
Yeah, absolutely. To raise up the working class and also be mindful of the least of these. I know through my experience, again, going beyond Knoxville, that the nation is really looking for a model city where there are questions all over this nation about how do we address poverty, how do we address the wage gap. Knoxville should be on the headlines. Anytime people are looking for solutions, Knoxville should be on the headline, and we can do that, again, of having an all-hands-on-deck approach, bringing people to the table who may not have necessarily been to the table. Folks like NAMI, who is doing great work around mental wellness and mental health care. What and who are the people right now that we have doing the work and doing the work well? Bring them to the table.
All right, Calvin, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Still to come, everyone, we're going to turn to our panel of pundits on this Sunday. We're going to talk more about the race for mayor, as well as former Governor Bill Haslam's decision not to run for Senate. Stay with us. You're watching Tennessee This Week. All right, everyone, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. Time now to hear from our panel of pundits on this Sunday. And joining us now, everyone, we have Craig Griffith, Courtney Piper, and James Corcoran. Good to see all three of you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Glad to be back. Thanks for having us.
Let's just jump right into it. We just heard from one of the mayoral candidates. We're talking about Calvin Skinner. So, Craig, let's start with you. What did you think of his pitch to Knoxvillians?
I think it's fairly typical coming out of the people that are trying to represent the middle class, the working class. They want to improve those conditions. I'm not so sure that the city government can do everything that they would like to be done to get that, to take care of the homeless, to make sure that we reduce wage disparities and things like that, maybe above the call of city government. But I salute them for trying, for bringing these issues out and at least stirring the conversation. I was at the city council forum last week, and those were certainly several of the topics were top of the mind of some of the council candidates. So maybe working together, they can address some of those issues.
And of course, he talked about bringing in nonprofits to help make a lot of this really happen.
Right. Well, the nonprofits are already there. As everyone knows, I'm on the board of Volunteer Ministry Center, which works to end homelessness in town. And we have a good working relationship with the city and actually have some contracts to do outreach to try to reduce the number of homelessness. So he's right. No one entity can do it by itself.
Courtney, what did you think of Skinner?
Well, first let me say that I have contributed to a mayoral candidate running for mayor in the city of Knoxville, Marshall Stair. But back to Calvin and sort of what he had to say. The last two election cycles in the city, we've really seen a growing number of candidates that are very well organized, and they're starting to articulate the needs of our most vulnerable populations, or the populations that they think have been forgotten about. We heard, especially during the city council debate, you know, the people that aren't doing as well. There are people in Knoxville that aren't doing as well. So, and we heard that from Calvin today about what he would do to represent those parts of Knoxville. And I really think it would behoove all of our mayoral candidates to take a good look at what some of these folks are saying and really try and incorporate this into their platform, and eventually when they do win the election.
James, your thoughts?
It's kind of counterintuitive to mention that there are people that are living from paycheck to paycheck on the borderline of homelessness, and then to be talking about the possibility of a tax increase. Because when the city government, you're paying for everything through property taxes and through sales taxes. So those are not things you can really readjust income with. So you're putting the same people at risk by a tax increase that you're purporting to help.
Someone relatively new to politics, you think those are the kinds of things they will figure out as time goes on?
Certainly there's a learning curve.
Yeah. All right, let's go to move on to one of the big topics over this past week, everyone. Former governor and former mayor of Knoxville, everyone. Of course, we're talking about Bill Haslam here, now saying that he will not be running for that open Senate seat in 2020. Haslam saying that he has had the honor of serving as Knoxville's mayor and Tennessee's governor, but his time in public service is over. In fact, Haslam saying, quote, "I have come to the conclusion that it is not my calling for the next period of my life. This is a difficult decision because I have loved my time in public service and I believe so deeply in the importance of our political process." So let's start up here. Anyone surprised that he decided not to run?
I am.
Are you?
Yeah, I thought as time went by that it was more likely he was going to run, but he finally made the decision, and frankly, I'm disappointed. I think that he occupies the middle ground in our political spectrum now, which is where I consider myself to be. So I don't see who's going to represent that centrist point of view coming up in this race now that he's out of it. And President Eisenhower in 1959 said the center is a good place to be. So I think that that's a place that we need to find more people to run from. But we'll see. I think that I was surprised that some of the people that took their names out of the race so soon, Diane Black and Mark Green and And some of the people, like Congressman Burchett, who
Is saying
is,
maybe.
is thinking maybe. So, as I've said before, Congressman Burchett speaks fluent East Tennessee. The question is, can he translate that into fluent Middle and fluent West Tennessean?
James, I know that you were one of the first people to reach out to us after this news broke early on Thursday morning. So what is your take on all of this?
I mean, my thought would be that if you take a look at last year's governor race, I think Boyd was the closest candidate to align with Haslam's, I think, political ideology, and I think that might be a microcosm for how this Republican primary might have shaked out. And Haslam was probably concerned that he ultimately could spend a whole lot of time and resources and not be successful.
And Randy Boyd, just to point out, is one of the ones saying he's not running for this either. So we do have a list of people not running. As you mentioned, Diane Black, Randy Boyd, Chuck Fleischman, Mark Green, Madeline Rogero, and Andy Burke. Some of the ones we reached out to see if they were considering it. Courtney, what are your thoughts, and who do you think is going to rise up here?
You know, I was a little surprised that Bill Haslam decided not to run. I thought as time went on, usually that's an indication of somebody's leaning more towards yes than no. So I was a little bit surprised. Although, as we have pundicized on this panel, we're all
Pundicized.
yes.
I like that word.
Is that a new verb?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I
You
made
heard it
up.
here first, everyone.
You know, we've all wondered why on earth he would even want to try this. He has plenty of options available to him for public service other than being in the United States Senate. So his reasoning is completely understandable. But this really means that the U.S. Senate primary and this election is going to be wide open. We just had another open seat with a wide open pool of candidates, and now we've got another one, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I want to stress to all of our viewers, we did reach out to Congressman Burchett, so we're being told that it was too early to really make any sort of decision, to say anything about this yet. So it's not a yes, it's not a no. Do you think he will throw his hat in the ring for this?
He can hold on to that seat that the second congressional seat from Tennessee, I think, for as long as he wants that seat. In the Duncan tradition, that may not be forever. He may think that 12 years or something like that is enough. But the Senate seat's more problematic, and he would have to raise a lot of money. Probably, I don't know, $10–20 million, and he has to think long and hard about whether that's a possibility. So, right now, it's almost wide open. And I was mentioning it to my fellow pundits here just a little bit ago. What about Kane? Jeff Jacobs for Senate.
Glenn Jacobs.
Glenn Jacobs. Yeah, Glenn Jacobs.
You can call him Kane. Most people know.
Kane, right? So he has a lot of name recognition all across the state.
We need to talk about someone else who decided not to run. Different office here, everyone. Knoxville State Representative and Speaker Pro Tem Bill Dunn says he is not running for the Speaker of the House. So a lot of people thinking that he would. We've talked about it a lot on this show. Courtney, what was your first thought when you heard that he made it official, just saying, hey, I'm just filling in. I don't want this full time?
Well, we've talked about this on the show. The fact that he pulled his name out of the running, something is going on here. There is some sort of jockeying happening that's been led by Speaker Cassada. Something weird is going to happen on August 23rd when they have this special session. I don't think it's going to be business as usual. We're just going to elect a new speaker. Bill Dunn is the next in line to get the speakership. The fact that he was sort of boxed out of the race is very curious to me. Now, Bill Dunn is very, very conservative. He's obviously not on my side of the political aisle, but I do think we have this problem in the state of Tennessee where Middle Tennessee is starting to overshadow the rest of the state in terms of political leadership. And Bill Dunn would have done a very good job making sure that the rest of the state is represented in the Tennessee General Assembly.
James, who do you think is going to rise to the top? And do you agree with Courtney on this, that something else is going on here?
Well, of course there's jockeying for position. I mean, that's just the very nature of politics. But the
and
idea
Cassada's involved.
But the idea that he's somehow controlling the inner workings of everything that's happening, I think, is a bit of a stretch. I think if he had so much power over the current caucus, he would be remaining in power. So I would say.
But he does, because when did we have this vote, with this no confidence vote? It was spring,
late
May.
Late May.
And he somehow managed to say, I'm going to make a decision after I get back from vacation, and everyone says, okay, that's cool. And then we don't have a special session called until the end of August. I mean, he is involved in this in some way, shape, or form. If he didn't have any power, the governor, everybody else would have said, no, this is happening right now, and you don't have a say about it.
There's a difference between being involved and being in control, and I would not go so far as to say that he's in control.
All right,
I think
wait,
Cassida-
who's
Cassida-
leading candidate? We have like 30 seconds left.
I think Sexton.
I would agree.
I don't have an opinion
Cameron
as of
Sykes.
this taping.
Yeah.
All right, we need to leave that there, unfortunately. Stay where you are, everyone. Still to come here on Tennessee This Week, everyone. UT Knoxville's new chancellor taking the helm and in the spotlight. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching Tennessee This Week. All right, everyone, welcome back to Tennessee This Week, everyone. We want to continue our conversation now with Craig, Courtney, and James, and thank you all for being here today. We want to talk a little bit about the University of Tennessee and the new chancellor. Everyone, we're talking about Dondi Plowman taking the helm of the State University System's flagship campus. On the job now for about a week, she outlined where she sees the university heading with service at the forefront. Take a listen.
To know what it means to be a volunteer. I think people in the state of Tennessee know. I want the world to know. I said to students yesterday, I want it to be true that when you leave here and go take a job wherever, whether it's in a school in Western Tennessee, or if you're traveling abroad, or you take a job in Dallas, I want people, when they hear you're from Tennessee, to say, oh, you're a volunteer. So what was your volunteer experience? I would like every student to have an answer to that. And more than just, I showed up one day and gathered canned goods, I'd like for people to be able to say, I had a meaningful experience that offered me the chance to be a leader.
All right, James, let's start with you on this. We've talked on this show several times about what we think Plowman needs to do after all the turmoil surrounding this position and the university. What did you think of her message? Do you think the university needs to focus on more volunteerism?
I don't know that we need more volunteerism. I think it's a cute talking point. I don't know that it really provides a whole lot of substance. Quite frankly, I'd like to see someone talking about making sure that people can continue to afford to attend the University of Tennessee, given how much tuition increases we've seen over the past years.
What about all of the issues and topics around diversity and inclusion as well on campus?
I think a lot of those have been largely blown out of proportion. I think some of the things like Sex Week are designed to be provocative. I don't think there's quite as much controversy as so much as just attention-grabbing rhetoric.
Courtney, you're a UT grad. What do you think of the message that you're hearing from the chancellor?
It's very unifying, and it's great. It's in a sharp contrast to her predecessor, Beverly Davenport, who just kind of went right in there and decided she was going to shake up the system. I think that Dondi has a better understanding of maybe how to work within the University of Tennessee framework, and she's saying all the right things. She's unifying people through a very positive message of wanting to have this great student experience at the University of Tennessee. So if she starts there and then wants to address some of the more pressing issues, she could be more successful.
Did you think it was a little light, though, for her first big speech coming out of the first week in office?
The lightness is productive in that it's going to help her build a winning coalition for whatever bigger issues she wants to tackle.
Craig, would you agree with that?
Yes, we pulled out that soundbite, and that was an interesting soundbite that she had. But there are also issues that she's going to have to deal with, mainly the establishment of the Oak Ridge Institute, and then merging the School of Agriculture in with the Knoxville campus. Those are going to be very, very small things that, very, very big things that she's going to have to do. So I think she's gotten off on the right foot in terms of not alienating many people on the campus and showing that she's open. And she has the, like James said, the issues of cost, issues of student debt, and things like that are all things that she's going to have to take up.
What do you think the biggest challenge, if you could name one challenge on the campus right now, really is?
Well, I think it's student debt, things like that. That's a challenge all around the country, and graduating more people in the STEM. Even though they do have a large engineering school over at UT, but getting those graduates out there, and she planned on having like 5 times the number of PhD students. So, and that's going to be a very difficult task to get done.
Courtney, do you think it was important that the university hire a female for this position again?
I don't know if that was as important as trying to find the most qualified level-headed candidate that was really going to lead the University of Tennessee Knoxville's campus, our flagship campus. So that seemed to be first and foremost the criteria that the Board of Trustees and the search committee was looking for, and I think they did a good job with it. Time will tell.
What would
She'll work well with the state legislature.
you think
I think
so?
that's as important as anything.
We will find out in due time. All right. Thank you guys for being with us today. We appreciate it. And thank you for joining us at home, everyone. That's going to do it for Tennessee This Week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will see you back next Sunday.
The views of guests and panelists of this program are their own and not necessarily those of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting Incorporated.